because you went from interning at kind of the scholarship firm that you were working with to now working with some of the most exciting talents, around the world. So talk to me a little bit about that journey.
After college, I started my own agency with the focus on looking for American players, bringing to Germany. This is how I started. This was my way in, So what helped me was that the US market was interesting for German clubs. We got over 2 boys for trials last summer. One went to Frankfurt and Dortmund, and the other one went to Wolfsburg and Schalke. I also got one player over from New York Red Bulls to Dortmund, top talent, doing very good. So for me, the worst thing agents can do is to promise, I bring you to this club. I would never do that. I would tell them, I think when we work together, this and this could be the outcome, but I cannot promise you that. And that's the reason why I started working on the relationship with the clubs before I did with the players, because I didn't want to tell a player, I can bring you this and this and this and that, and then I couldn't, So I told them, I think I can bring you there. The rest is on you. And I think it's crucial that we look for the right personalities, because first of all, especially on youth players, it determines how far you can come. That was one thing. But also, that's the reason why I have good players, we have good players. Most proudest moment was when Iso Jakobs was making his World Cup debut. It was 3 hours before the first World Cup game of Iso, when we got approval by FIFA that he could play, and walking out, and I had tears in my eyes. It was just an incredible moment for me. It was like me playing there, and I think that's what it's about, like when a player wins a title, it's like us winning a title. And
so guys, really special episode of Behind Closed Doors today. The man that will be joining me is a person, a player, a friend that I've known for a long time now, all the way back to our university days where we were resident assistants in the dorms out in West Virginia. It's pretty cool really to see his transition on a career basis, in the professional world. Someone that's been in a similar situation to myself and worked in a similar industry, but this guy has just taken it to another level, and knowing how driven he's been since kind of day one, it's cool to see everything come to fruition now. So, Miro, you got a big smile on your face there, but I'm not saying anything that's not true, right?
I hope not. First of all, thank you for having me. Big pleasure. And I just had a throwback of us being in the dorms. That's the reason why I started smiling.
Yeah, it's crazy. But like I said there, I remember us talking. We used to have a few late night chats about football and about life and everything like that. And I think you were somebody that from an early age kind of knew what you wanted to do. I remember you working in the summers in terms of internships and so on. So would you say going into this field that you're in now in terms of the professional world and working in, an agency side of things is something that you've always known that you wanted to do?
Yes, for sure. So I always wanted to be in the professional environment eventually, whether that's in my early days, of course, wanted to be a pro player and wanted to play there. But later on, if I realized, the level is not good enough, I wanted to be part of the professional environment. And I thought my best way was, I didn't really see myself as a coach. Maybe the technical abilities were missing a little bit. But I thought the best way of doing it, of having a big impact, and maybe even, the easiest entrance would be in the agent market. So I would say I prepared myself early on for this route or this way. I decided to go to the US to study because here in Germany I couldn't do sport management because my GPA from high school wasn't good enough. So I thought if I wanted to be in the business, maybe I need a sport management degree, and then the best way is going to the US. And so that's the reason how I came up with it. But yeah, pretty much early on, I knew I wanted to be an agent.
Yeah. I think I have to make a note of this as well. You kind of undersell yourself a little bit because you were a very gifted footballer. I think if it hadn't been for injuries and a bit of bad luck on that side. I think you had a real good chat. I remember the first kind of week or so of pre-season where we met, and I was looking at this guy, and we were in similar positions at the time, and I'm thinking, oof, I've got my work cut out here. But I don't know what you believe, but I'm a big believer in everything happening for a reason, right? And looking back, I think that experience in terms of the US probably helped you in your career now, having opened a bigger network, seen what's out there, how everything works. And would you agree?
1,000%. Honestly, it was not even a little bit, but it was my door opener. A specific situation. Because I came to my job and the idea. So after college I started my own agency based on like with the focus on looking for American players, bringing to Germany. This is how I started. And also was an interesting market for some German agencies, and this was my way in. So yeah, in this case 1,000%, just because of the fact that otherwise I would never have a network in the US. I would never be focused on it. I would never had the information that I had about this topic to get started. And also, honestly, when I came to the US, I don't know if you remember that, but my English was terrible. So that, of course, as well. And I have to say, now I'm not really focused on the US market as much anymore. I'm much more involved here in the European market now. But I have a lot of topics in England with foreign players, with all around the world. So I never had a language barrier with English or anything like that. So that, of course, helped me as well. But yeah, 1,000%. Yeah.
You mentioned something like for you, the agency side of things was kind of like the easy route in, I think is the word that you used to describe. But I think it could be, it couldn't be further from the truth. It's a very, very competitive market. And if you've not got kind of a big playing background, having played professionally or amassed these contacts, starting from the ground up, it's one of the most cutthroat kind of professions within the world of football. So I think where you've got to now, you should be very proud of yourself. But I think that's what I really want to kind of get into is your journey since you kind of left me in your life, or not just me, but we kind of went our separate ways. Like, what's happened since then? Because you went from interning at kind of the scholarship firm that you were working with to now working with some of the most exciting talents, around the world. So talk to me a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, so I started already in college working a little bit for the company that got me over to the US, and looked into different aspects there, like how they did it was, they helped you going from Germany or whatever here in Europe to the US college soccer. So they had a system where, you would do sales. Sales in that case means acquiring a new player, also athlete management. So when the players are with the company, to take care of that and everything. And then actually the placement part. So the placement is, connecting them with universities and coaches. So I had the chance to look in each aspect there already early on. And it's the same thing for us now, that my job, it's really the same thing, only on a different level, but pretty much the same. And, now our agency really stands for looking for the top players. So that, of course, it's a little bit different. So for the sales part, and if I want to call it for us, acquiring new players, it's more about getting the right information before that on who's good and who's not, and then being able to get them to your company and to help them. But besides that, it's the same thing. It's athletes management, looking for your players and helping them in each situation. And the placement part, so finding them a team, or helping them out in situations. So I had the chance to look in each aspect already in that at that time and to learn. And then, when I started my own thing, in the beginning, it was was tough, trying things, working your way up in the market. And I think it's about confidence already then, it's always how you approach a sporting director, how smart are you to get the people's contacts, but then also how are you as a person? If you are a genuinely person that people get along with, then it's always easier for you. And I would say for myself that I'm a person that can network pretty easily, just because I like people and people like me. And then it's already a different situation. And you just need to see that you create situations where you can help people and people help you. So and then after yeah, tough times as well. I think I understood more and more like what the market actually needs and how I can participate in that. And then eventually I had the chance to yeah, get my current job, and with also the mentor that I have right now. My boss Dirk Hebel was really a big mentor for me, and he gave me the opportunity to also be free, because I think that's the next thing. Like, if you even have the chance to enter an agency, a lot of times they rather keep you small, and you're rather limited to what you can actually do. For me, that was the complete opposite. Like, my strengths were recognized and they were promoted as well. And that's the reason why I'm here. Luck, hard work, but also people that supported me in that way. And I gave as much back as I could, and that's the reason why I have good players. We have good players, and I have also the surrounding of, whenever I have a situation where I maybe can't help, I have someone next to me that has experience of 20 years in the market, that knows every situation, and that helps me. So yep, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, so many interesting points there. I think from mentorship to working in that kind of group, but still being out there on your own. I think there's so much that we can cover in this. So it's identifying what kind of is the most important. Now, I think what I want to do is try and answer a lot of the questions that I get asked in my profession and my day to day. So I think some people are really kind of misguided or misinformed on what the role of an agent actually is, right? In terms of what are the responsibilities. And we just talked there, you're just done with the January transfer market. And yet already you're starting that process. So there's some people that maybe believe that you only come alive, sort of in the summer and in January, but it's a year-round profession. So just talk to me a little bit about that. What is the role of an agent in today's world? And again, what does that look like in terms of your schedule and your day-to-day?
Yeah, so in general, it's pretty easy. We are there for players to find a club and to I'm being there to get them a contract. That's the main thing. But in order to do that, you have 1,000 tasks, I'd say. So first of all, I'd say in the market, that is a very competitive market between agents. You need to have good players, so you need to look for them, you need to find them, you need to bring them to your company. Then, of course, you need to have a good network to the clubs, to being able to help them and to find them the next step. Then you need to maintain those relationships, so it's not only bringing someone to another club, but also looking after him and see if that's the right step. And then if you want to be a good agent, then you need to have a relationship to your player, need to know what's the right step for him. How can I help him? Like, is this club already the best thing for him? Or should we wait maybe for another one to come in? Need to have a feeling for the market as well. So, after we just finished a transfer period, it goes directly into, helping the players that moved, new apartments, new cars, new everything, tax advisors on their side and everything, support that. Our other players also have needs, they need help, getting again in touch with the clubs to see what are they looking in the next window, watch their games. You always need to be on top of things, need to see is someone ahead of him, like what can be the issues, like does he need to work on something, like do we need to bring in individual coaches to work on first touch, on whatever it is, medical
mindset. It's not just on the pitch, right?
There's a 1,000 things that you need to consider, and for that, and to see and to make your players better, and then in the end to get him to the club that you want him to get, and that he wants to get as well. and then of course this is how you get paid as well, you know. So you need to do it, but in order for that, you need to have a good relationship to your player to actually know what's going on and how you can help and make him better and what's the best for him, you know. So yeah, there's so much things with it, but for me, you know, in general, I would say, you know, I look after a handful of players, not too many, because I want to be very selective on who I work with, because I feel like if I work with someone, I really want him to I want to be able to help him first of all, you know. And that's also maybe for some people good to know, is I feel like you need to choose an agent that's the right for you and can actually help you. Because for me, for example, if since I'm in the pro environment, in maybe even one of the top segments in terms of players, I have a lot to do with those clubs, you know. So if players come to me and say, yeah, but how about third, fourth division in Germany? You have to know I never speak with them, you know. So I'm probably not the best person to talk to when you want to move there. You know, people think, okay, because you have better players, then easily you have contacts there. But it's not like that. It's even the opposite. You know, there's some agents that are much smaller, but have much better connections to those clubs that people want to go, you know. So I think if one is looking for an agent, you always need to see that it's the right one for you. And for us, you know, we can help the best players in here in Germany very, very well. But maybe not the players that are in fourth division, you know. It's just like that.
Yeah, I think growing up, the word agent and you know, agents in general in professional football were looked at a little bit as you know, with a bad connotation. It was kind of their incentive is, you know, the financial sense and so on. But as you get older and you kind of work your way up the levels, you realize that an agent is really essential to you and your career path and trajectory, right? I mean, you look at some footballers, the one that springs to mind straight away is Choupo-Moting, who was at Bayern Munich, you know, that he's been and played for all of these huge clubs. And he's had a fantastic career. And again, I'm sure a lot of that is down to his agent and so on. So it is important. And again, people coming to me on a daily basis and asking me, you know, how does it work? What should I look for in an agent and so on? And this is, I don't know if you have the answer to this, Miro, because it's a difficult question to answer, but how do you differentiate? Because the problem is when agents come to players or they spot a talented player, they're always going to tell them or promise them big things and they can do this for them and this for them. And I've seen a lot of times players sign with an agent and be locked down to a year, 2-year contract. And they sign with the agent and then they don't really deliver on the promises or they're hard to get hold of and so on. So what are the kind of the telltale signs if an agent is right for you or not? What should players look for?
So first of all, the contract aspect, it's funny that you say that. So like, for example, we only sign with players pretty much when they are in England because or have situations where it really needs to be. Because I feel like it puts you in a wrong relationship with your player as well. And in England, I have to say you have to do it. So there's certain markets where you actually have to sign. But here in Germany, for example, we don't sign players because we just want to have a relationship, you know. And if in the relationship someone says I want to leave, then even a contract doesn't help me, you know, because I lose the connection to the player and then it doesn't make any sense. But in general, I think if you are looking for an agent, you need to see what is your next step and is it someone that can actually bring me to that next step? Because, for example, what we have a lot here is, and we do that often too, is players from outside coming to Germany, for example, and developing very well and then want to make the next step, you know. And in those times, we are perfect for those players because we did that already 1,000 times, you know, getting players from Germany to England maybe, or to the best club in Germany, you know. So like for that, we are actually perfect, or bringing players into Germany also, you know. That is really our key role, you know. Of course, we have great relationships to the English clubs, to French clubs, whatever, to each league. But this is really our key market. And so if you look for an agent, you need to see, did you maybe outgrow your agent, and maybe he's on the level to bring players to where you are, but you want to do the next step. Then you need to find an agent that can do that and prove that he can do that, you know. So I think to look for that is very important. But then second of all, you need to have a good relationship, you know. And I feel like you can get a feeling very easily of if someone is in it for the money, or is actually someone that is into football, understands the game, can break down what you're good in, what you need to work on, you know, someone that can actually make you better. Because I can guarantee you, those are the same conversations that your agent will have to a club. So if you have the feeling that he has no idea about football, how can you actually tell a club what your strengths are, you know, why you're good, why you're the good fit for him, you know? And I think one should create the questioning about that, you know, like can he actually help me? And then, you know, is there a relationship behind it? Because it's like, oh, if there's no relationship, there's no trust, and then, you know, you cannot have each other.
Yeah. It's interesting because the relationship and the personal skills and everything like that, knowing you, obviously you have that in abundance, right? And you're a really easygoing guy. And I understand that that's really down to the individual, right? You know, that relationship is an individual thing. Now, the other side of it, what you're really talking about is like experience from like clientele that they've worked with in the past. So my question to you is, how did you approach that when you were a new agent on the market? You didn't have this big client list where you place this player in this club and this player in this club. You know, it must have been difficult, not with that kind of history on your side. I know you were working for a bigger firm that had obviously working with the likes of Marco Reus and different players, right? But tell me how you approach that, because as an individual, it must have been really difficult to kind of get that trust from young players.
Yeah, that for sure. And that's the reason why I started working on the relationship with the clubs before I did with the players, because I didn't want to tell a player, I can bring you this and this and this and that, and then I couldn't, you know. So for me, it was important to get the relationship with the clubs first before I actually speak to players and tell them I think I could bring you the club, you know. Because if you can deliver, then you're dead before you started, you know. So I started heavily working on that before I got in players, and this was difficult. But what helped me was that the US market was interesting for German clubs, you know, and there was no one that, you know, looked at or was on that level in the US and was young and tried to work on that, you know. So they all felt like, okay, this is someone, you know, that can actually bring me talent and good players, good value. And yeah, with that, it wasn't as hard to also show I have good connection to this and this and this club, and this is what I think I can bring you. And, you know, then it's about transparency. You know, I didn't tell any player from the beginning, I'm going to bring you to Bundesliga or that. But I looked at the players, I evaluated them and thought, okay, this level could fit there. And then I told them, I think I can bring you there. The rest is on you. And I think, especially in the US, that's what a lot of players want to hear. I can give you that entrance. The rest is on you. And that's pretty much how I dealt with it. And, you know, if you have the context for the club, then you can deliver. And then it's up on the boys, but also your understanding if the player is actually good enough, you know?
Yeah. So two questions on that. One is on the talent coming through from kind of North America. And I think Canada's a really upcoming market as well, right? Alongside the US and so on. So we'll talk about that. But the first question is, when you're looking at a player, so when you're discovering the talent, and maybe you can talk about more in the older days when you weren't working necessarily with the kind of the top of the top, but more so the players coming up that needed that chance, looking for an entrance into Europe or so on. What was it that you were looking for from your side? How do you evaluate a player?
So that honestly was very, very hard. Nowadays it's much easier because the best you just see right away, and you get tips from your network as well. Back then it was more like, of course, about videos and Vita as well, that you try to work your way through, but then also network, because, you know, even if it's only even if you have a good network to college coaches, for example, and they tell you, oh yeah, this player, I saw him at that tournament, and like you need to know who you can trust, but then you need to see for yourself. I feel like the network way is just to save time, because if you have a loads of players, then you need to make sure that you can actually deal with the workload. So maybe a couple of players fall up because you already heard they're not good enough, but then you have to see for yourself and watch videos and see if there's something that where you can help.
How many times will you watch a player before you say, I want to sign this guy?
Sorry, how many games I watch?
Yeah, like how many times will you watch a player? Will you sign a player just off a great performance when you first, you're in the crowd, or you go into watching play, he has one great game, or do you give him a certain amount? Is it down to the individual? Like, how do you approach that?
So yeah, in the beginning, it was definitely different. In the beginning, I'd say I tried to watch at least like 3 full games, something like this. Which is time consuming for sure. Nowadays, so again, for me nowadays, it's really like I know the players already before I even decide to sign them. A lot of times, it's no-brainers a lot of times. But even when we do youth players, for example, I at least even now watch one game for sure live. Back then I couldn't. I watched 3 on video, but one game live for me is really the minimum that I have to do, especially when, I hear from everyone, this youth player is amazing. Then I have my contacts that I really trust on, and I know if they say it, it's true. But even then, I watch at least one game. And if I have some question marks, I watch another game. If I still have question marks, I watch another game, before I get convinced. And now I'm even more limited to the spots that I want to have in terms of players. But back then, after those 3 games, I had to make a call, first get their numbers and everything, but then had to make a call, then had to convince them. So after those 3 games, there was still a lot of work to do. And then a lot of times they would just not be interested. And, it's...
Talk to me about that second conversation though. Like, how much does the player's personality, his attitude, how much does that affect it? And more so on the youth level, right? You watch a player, he plays amazing, you're interested in working with him, you approach him and his family. Like, if he's a good player, you're willing to put up with whatever, or do they have to have a certain set of values and a certain personality? Like, is that an indicator for you of how far they can go and how successful they can be?
In our company, 1,000%, for us, we used to be the biggest agency in Germany and the biggest, or one of the biggest in Europe at that time. We used to be Super Sports Total with hundreds of players, and now since my boss separated from his former partner, we try to be more boutique, more looking for the right players that fit to us and we to them, with a handful of good players, and actually, having a relationship, managing careers, and not only being there for the next transfer. And because of that, it's crucial that we look for the right personalities, because first of all, especially on youth players, it determines how far you can come. That was one thing. But also for our own time and sake, because if you only have those spots and one of them is just not the right personality, it messes up your whole time, and how much you can give it, so we need to be very careful on that. But as I said, the main part is also that it really for youth players, it really determines how far you can come as well, so good personality is 100% part of it.
Absolutely. So let's go back to North America specifically, because I think a lot of my audience will be players, kind of youth players in the US that are maybe disillusioned with the North American system and how it's working, and are obviously all dreaming of that phone call from yourself to bring them over to Europe and give them the chance. So talk to me about that and how you've seen the level rise over the years, and how much you're working. I know you mentioned you're back in the in Germany, really focusing on Europe. But talk to me about that market as a whole.
Yes, it's a very interesting market for sure. That's why we are involved, or we're still involved. I think it's getting better from time to time. I mean, even for us, at the time when we were there, probably the college level even got better, or at least it's different now because there's more leagues introduced and stuff like that. But the overall level is getting much better, and there's just so many athletes there in the US that have amazing abilities, and now with the system that they create and where it gets better and better. The overall level is getting better as well, and with the World Cup coming up, of course, there's more focus on soccer or football, however you want to call it, so yeah, the level will also be getting better, and you can see more and more talents coming over. For me, once a year I go to this. I go to the GA Cup. With a big group of German scouts. Of course, they are all there. But we also like to go to Florida, of course. It's a nice time for us as well. And for me, good to be around the scouts at the tournament and to see what the level is. And last year, we had a little. We got over 2 boys for trials last summer. One went to Frankfurt and Dortmund, and the other one went to Wolfsburg and Schalke. And so the teams are all very focused on that. I also got one player over from New York Red Bulls to Dortmund, top talent, doing very good. And so, this works over here, like the talents, they come through, they fit with the system, they fit with the cultural aspect. And, it's the same as always, sometimes it's not the right club, but in general, like with Germany and everything around it, so yeah, we still very heavily in that market as Germans, I'd say,
Yeah. How important is it that you feel for players in the US currently? Because again, it's improving every year. There's bigger infrastructure, bigger interest, and bigger investment in youth soccer. But how important is it for them to come over at a young age and sort of experience Europe and the difference in football and culture? Because you look at the Pulisic's and pretty much all the national team players that are playing at national team level now, they all typically came over and experienced that at a young age, right? And kind of came through the system here in Europe. So how important do you feel that is?
It's a tricky question because, to be honest, you could see it either way. You could either say they developed that well because they went to Germany, or you can say they were just so good they would have developed anywhere, And I think it's a mix between it, because I think nowadays the level, or let's say the talents, if they're really that top, the US gives the infrastructure for them to come through. It's like that. Nowadays, they have it more and more. I couldn't say whether this kid with 13, 14, 15, or nowadays, like they all look for European passports, but even 16, if they develop better in Germany or in the US. I'm normally not a big fan of getting someone out of his family too early, like me in general, like I don't work with young kids, period, like 16, like is the age, maybe 15 where I get some context with the family, but 16 is normally the earliest that we approach families. Because now in the US, they really have a good infrastructure. They make it very difficult for European teams to come and get their players. But I think it's an individual question. So some players are better off with a different surrounding in different leagues with more competition. Some not. There's good examples of players that went through the MLS system and got to Europe now, and it will be more because they make it hard for the European teams to take them out, even with passports. So I'd say it's a mixture, I cannot really say it's the better way to go there or there. I think eventually it is, of course, eventually everything is here. This is the center of football. And eventually, if you want to make it very far, you have to come over here.
And Miro, just give people an idea, in terms of the amount of players that you're reviewing and that are on your radar. So let's talk about the US. You're under no illusion that the top players there are being monitored, right? In terms of monitoring hundreds and maybe even thousands of youth players coming through the system. Talk to me a little bit about that, because I think players need to understand that if you're good enough nowadays with the statistics and with the sharing of data and also just general infrastructure around soccer and the platform that's presented, if you're good enough, there's a good chance that you're going to be found by someone. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So maybe not by me, but from someone for sure. So I think, I go over there and pick already selected ones, so like, but I'd say the infrastructure that there is nowadays, also with social media, that is one thing to get exposure, because like I'd say every agent, every scout follows those big platforms like 433 and Rising Ballers, whatever. Like there's a lot out of there where at least you
Can I just say, and JD15 recruitment, obviously.
Yeah, that of course as well. Yeah, but let's talk about the US in general. High school coaches, college coaches, even now academies, MLS teams having connection with, or even partnerships with European teams.
Yeah.
Like if there is those Alfonso Davies, we know about it, and football knows about it, and they come here if they actually are that good. Yeah. I think there's very, very, very few players that are completely missed out in the system. There are talents that are in the system that are maybe not as good, or not seen as good as they actually are, and maybe are a little bit left out and could have been somewhere else in the end. But to be completely overseen, I think it's not possible.
Yeah. So let's just recap what we've talked about so far. So in order to have a good chance of being picked up by a professional agent or a professional team, you need to do the following. You need to be in a high-level team, that goes without saying, right? Competing at the most competitive level. So if you're in the US, you're looking at your MLS, academy teams, you're looking at your ECNL, you're looking at, wherever you are in the world, playing at the highest possible level. You need to be consistent, because if Miro comes to watch you play, you're going to need to play well, in the majority, not only in one game, but in 2, 3, maybe 4 or 5 games. You need to have the mentality and the personality to be successful, right? You need to have a level of maturity. And if you think because you're doing well in your team, or you're the best player in your state or your region or wherever you're from, that's going to equate to you being a professional soccer player, then there's a million other players that are in your position that, are going to have a different alternative mentality that might have a more chance of making it than you do due to your personal qualities. And I think the other thing that goes without saying is you have to be good enough, right? I think one thing that happens is, people like myself, people like you, we get approached on social media on a regular basis with people, asking for opportunities and connections and to put, open doors. But ultimately, you have to be good enough to warrant those opportunities. Now, that's not to say in places like Germany, in places like England, wherever you are playing in, one of the top leagues in Europe, it is very, very difficult to play professional soccer, not only at the Bundesliga, or the second division, third division, whatever the case may be. In the full professional structure, it's very difficult to be a pro. So the idea is that if you're doing and ticking all those boxes, then you have to market yourself to opportunities and look at what's out there and what's realistic to you, right? Because that might not be in Europe, that might be in a different part of the world, in a different continent. But you have to have everything in check in your own personal account before you can go and try and pursue the, because I think too many people try and jump from A to Z, right?
Yes.
And they don't get everything in check. Is there anything that I missed off there, Miro? Anything you'd throw into the equation as well?
No, I think the last part is very important. Like know your next step and don't like think that you are too good, because that is not helping you. Rather go smaller steps and step up each time than trying to do the crazy next step. There's so many players
Yeah.
that approach me and ask me for help for teams, players that are fourth division and want to go to Bundesliga. Like it's just not realistic. And I think the second part, especially for players that are young, I think there are really levels to what you should work on. And I think until a certain age, because like in the early ages, you come a lot about like technical abilities and understanding the game and stuff like that. And then later on, to do the next steps, then you come about physical aspects, and that you should work on that. But for young players, I cannot stress this enough, like technical abilities you cannot learn later on. Those are the things that you have to work on the most. It's like, don't think because you're ultra fit in under 13, under 14, it helps you at all. It's really the technical abilities, like how's your first touch, things like that. How do you read the game, understanding the game, and then like all the physical aspects come when you turn older, and that's then what you really need to work on in order to really make the next step. Because I can tell you, second and first division in Bundesliga mostly differentiate between physicality and but all those players, each one in first to third division, were the best players in the age group in their team at some point. Otherwise they will never make it that far. And I think that's the goal, should always be the goal: be the best in your team.
Absolutely. 100%. No, it's really useful. I think one thing that you mentioned there is kind of know your level or be realistic, right? And I think players need to understand what we mean by that. We live in a society and an age now where everything is digital, right? So if you're looking at where you should play, you've got to take that responsibility on your own back and go and watch games, right? Go get on YouTube, look at games in the Oberliga, or go and look in games in sort of high level semi-professional in the conference in the UK. Go and have a look at these games, because what you're going to find is there's some really, really good players playing at those levels and so on. Go and watch a game in Australia and see what it's like in the MPL. Go and watch a game in sort of, Eastern Europe and see what a game's like there, and study the game. You've got to be a student of the game and understand exactly what that looks like, because again, being realistic, we realize that not everybody has the experience where they've traveled or know somebody that played in this country, or whatever the case may be. But there's no excuse, because you can get on your phone, on your laptop, whatever the case may be, and study and research leagues and research contacts. And I think networking is something that's really important to me, and it becomes so important as you get older, the importance of networking. And I wish I knew that at a younger age, because I would have put a lot more focus into it. But anyway, Miro, you've been fantastic in terms of giving everybody kind of advice and a general overview of agency. And I know it's really difficult because, again, you're working at the kind of the top of the top now, but also because it's very individual to each person. But now I want to get into kind of wrapping things up and finalizing on you as an individual. So I want to know, from friend to friend, what has been your most proud moment in terms of in your professional career? And I want you to name drop some names, because one thing that we've avoided here is talking about players that you're working with and so on. But I see you on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, posting with Jeremy Frimpong at Bayer Leverkusen, with obviously Ishmael Jacobs, who I know is a family member of yours, with all these ballers that I see on TV in the Champions League and so on. And now player that I played with that used to live downstairs for me or upstairs, is mixing it with all these guys. So talk to me about that.
I honestly, about that one, I can't really speak, because I know exactly what my proudest moment was. It wasn't a transfer, I have to say. And I think this is really what the agent, or, like what I said in the beginning, that, my goal was, when I realized I couldn't be a player, I wanted to be in the professional environment. And, like if your players get achievements, and especially if you have a good relationship to your players, you feel like you did as well, So for me, for sure, the most proudest moment was when Izo Jakobs was making his World Cup debut, because it was a very long story, but from the first time when he made the decision not to play for Germany but for Senegal, going to a World Cup, and then actually not being eligible to play in the World Cup, and us fighting the FIFA ruling, because he played some games with the under 21s where he was already a certain age, and normally it's not allowed to play at that age already for one country and then change, but it was all due to COVID, so we fought against it, and for me it was a tough weeks in Qatar as well, fighting for it, and it was 3 hours before the first World Cup game of Izo, when we got approval by FIFA that he could play. And I remember like the lawyer called me and Izo called me, and I was on the way to the stadium and thinking like, okay, like I would honestly, we prayed, we thought everything is working out, but of course you have doubts, and then they called and everything was good. I told them like, listen, I will tell everyone, don't worry about nothing, just focus on the game now because it's an important game, and I will tell everyone, each one in the family, everybody, and you just focus on the game. And I did before, and then I went into the stadium, more or less put my phone on do not disturb, and them walking out, and I had tears in my eyes. It was just an incredible moment for me. It was like me playing there, and I think that's what it's about, like when a player wins a title, it's like us winning a title. And that's, for example, also one of the saddest moments was when we were sure Dortmund would win the title. Marco Reus, our coach Edin Terzic, and Salih Özcan. I the morning of the game, I bought a suit. I was ready to go to the celebration afterwards, and then they lose or tie in Mainz, and Bayern wins it in the end. It's the same thing. It would have been amazing for them to win it, and I think it's the same thing. If a player gets injured, unfortunately, I didn't have it like this yet, but I know, for example, for my boss with the relationship with Marco Reus, there was a lot of sad moments, and they celebrated their wins together, but they cried together when situations like that happen, and I feel like this is what being an agent is really about. It's not being like making the deals and stuff like that. You should know, you should add value to your players and bring them to where they want to be and where they can be. But other than that, it's like your intrinsic motivation should be to live the football life with them, and to make them better, and to be there in those situations and to win those things together. That's really what my motivation is.
So last two questions, okay? And they're two big questions. So the second to last one is, what is the best bit of advice that you were given, and who was it by?
That's a tough one, honestly. I know for sure it was probably by Dirk, and to be fair, he's giving me a lot of good advice. I think it's really about that you can't control everything, and I think especially in the beginning, I was trying to, especially when it came to transfers, where I would really try to push transfers so hard, but a lot of times you cannot control it, because there's so many factors that get into and transfer, and to stay calm in those situations, and always have a plan B, or plan C, plan D, is really important. But for me, what I learned as well, and also by him, is that I will not tell players something I can't promise. You know what I mean? So for me, the worst thing agents can do is to promise, I bring you to this club. I would never do that. I would tell them, I think when we work together, this and this could be the outcome, but I cannot promise you that because I don't know if tomorrow you get injured or this and this happens, you know. So I think being really open and transparent and just sharing what you think you can do is much better than, you know, overselling yourself.
So last question, who is someone or who is a player that's maybe not on the world stage yet, or maybe not, you know, in all the headlines, that we should look out for in the future, whether he's signed by you or whether he's someone that's come across your desk who you're aware of that we should watch out for? And if you want to name more than one, feel free.
So are you speaking about like type world-class player?
I'm speaking you young player coming through, whether he's in the academy or a player playing in the lower league system that you're really excited about because you think he's got the potential to go to the top.
Okay. So there's one player for sure that I saw. I was in because you know I tell you, we have in our agency we have amazing talents and there's a lot of players to look out for. But I actually want to use someone from outside. I was at the under-17 World Cup in Indonesia last year. And you know, the German team won, which is very good. But actually, the Senegalese team, you know, me being half Senegalese, really surprised me. And there's amazing talent. If I had to take one out, there's one player, Amara Diouf is his name, 15 years old, now 16 maybe. So younger than the players that actually played there. Captain of the team, amazing player. I think he will be someone that comes very far. But I think, yeah, our players in general, there's a lot of youth play, or not a lot of, but our individual youth players that we think they're good enough to work with, they will all come on the radar eventually, you know, because otherwise we wouldn't work with them. So yeah, I'm very excited for them. But Amara Diouf is one that I will follow and see how far he can get, because just in terms of potential, he has the potential of being at least a top 10 player in the world, honestly.
Oof.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. So I know everyone's going to be going after this. They're going to be Googling and going on his transfer market and trying to find out where he is. But listen, Miro, I could sit here and chat for you for another hour or so because we've glossed over a lot of stuff. But I always like doing these podcasts with people that have kind of been involved in my life at one point or another, right? So obviously we go a way back, and you were a really close friend to me out in West Virginia of all places. And I can't say from that standpoint, it's amazing to see the things that you've gone on to achieve. And I know that this is kind of, you're right in the thick of it at the minute, but I think you're sort of warming up, you know. I think there's a lot more to come, and I'm sure I'm going to see a lot more pictures with a lot more sort of high profile footballers and so on. But it mainly comes down to you as a person. You mentioned like relationships and personal skills and so on. For me, this is not a surprise because you're extremely motivated and driven when you know, when we were, you know, living together and working together. But also you were extremely kind of realistic in terms of the pathway that you wanted to go, and you were very like locked in, you know, that this is what you wanted to do. And it's amazing to see it kind of come into fruition now, my man. So listen, carry on the good work. Hopefully, you know, if I get a little bit fitter, you might look at signing me again one day. I'm still keeping the dream alive. But yeah, thank you so much, man. And again, it's amazing to see what you do.
Sure. Thank you for having me. All the best for you as well. And hope to see a couple of good players coming through that system as well.
Cheers, Miro.
Yes.